Whether it's trolls or even family members, often we encounter situations and people who intentionally or maybe unintentionally trigger us and push our buttons. So in this video, I'm going to tell you some of the tools that I've adopted in order to stop myself being triggered by toxic people. So the very first thing to keep in mind is that you are not your thoughts and you are not your emotions. Once I realized this, that was the game changer, right? There is a difference between me and my thoughts and my emotions, right? And ultimately what I learned to do is to create a bit of space, create some distance between myself and the emotions. And what that buffer did, it allows me the choice to choose how to respond. And that's the key point, right? Because the word respond and react, they're quite similar, but there's an important nuance that we need to understand. So a reaction, that is something that is almost automatic, right? So think about being triggered and then we react. We see red and we black out. However, once you create some distance between yourself and that emotion, that gives you time to actually contemplate, okay, how am I going to respond in this situation? So to give you an example, I was doing a live stream the other day and the energy was amazing, right? Very like a family vibe. And then someone came in, right? And their intention was to disrupt, was to kind of point, and criticize my hairline. It's something as silly as that, right? But just completely changing the vibe, trying to get a response from me. But I saw what was happening, right? I saw what was happening. I think, oh, someone's trying to push my buttons, right? But because I've learned this principle, I was able to choose how am I going to respond to this, right? So I chose to respond with kindness, okay? And this is another principle, right? So there's an art to kind of take what could be a potentially triggering situation and then turn it around, man. Some people call it killing with kindness, right? If you're from a biblical background, it's like, listen, bless those who curse you. Whichever frame you're most inclined to, flip it around, use that energy, flip it back around, man. And then you can take the energy behind that action and you're using it in a more positive manner. So that's another thing that I found to be useful. And a practice which helps to actually create that distance between you and those thoughts is meditation. So meditation, very important practice for me. It's something that I now do every single day. And that allows me to realize that, whoa, these thoughts, there's time to actually decide and let the thoughts pass through, right? It might be a thought of anger, frustration, but you don't have to identify with those thoughts. You and your thoughts are different, and you don't have to identify with those thoughts. So perhaps meditation might be something already that you're practicing. So maybe it's just more of the same. But for me, that's become a vital practice to give me that distance between the thoughts, my actions, and of course, myself. Another tool that I found to be useful is to actually be proactive, right? So I went on a quest to identify what could trigger me and make sure that I neutralize it ahead of time. So for example, I was anticipating, how would I respond if somebody called me the N-word, right? Or if somebody cussed me, if someone dissed me, how would I respond? So I kind of went through these scenarios in my head and realized, listen, I'm not gonna let these things get under my skin. So by being proactive, by thinking of situations either in the past or potential situations in the future that might trigger you, you might actually become better equipped to respond once those situations actually manifest in real life. So that's another principle that worked for me. Something else to consider is this notion of expectations, man. As I've grown older, right, I've realized that one of the big reasons for me getting triggered in the past is expectations. So let me give you the example using the classroom setting. I'm a teacher, all right? So one of the things that used to get under my skin is when students are late. When students are late, that would kind of, man, it's annoying because it's disrupting the classroom, right? And the reason why I was becoming so frustrated by the lateness is because I had a certain expectation, right? I had an expectation. And it took me years to realize that, listen, I can't control the actions of these young people, right? And I don't want to let that change my mood. Okay, so I had to let go of those expectations that every single student is going to be here on time. Like, what a silly expectation to have. And me holding that expectation, it led me to feeling annoyed, frustrated, right? But now I've let go of those expectations. So when students are late, my mood does not change, right? My mood doesn't fluctuate like it used to do. Okay, so I've learned how to deal with these situations better. So something also to think about is expectations, man, and managing expectations, letting go of certain expectations, because that tends to lead to suffering and in some cases being triggered. And the final thing that I want to talk about is offense. One of the reasons that we get triggered is because we choose to be offended. You heard me. You choose to be offended. Being offended is a choice that we make. But here's the thing. We don't have to make that choice. We can choose not to be offended, right? It's tough. But I'm telling you, that's what I choose to do on a daily basis. People say offensive things all of the time. People say offensive things to me all of the time, especially on these live streams, right? But I make a decision. I'm not going to be offended. I'm not going to play. I'm not going to give you ammunition, right? I'm not going to give you what you want. Okay? So offense is a choice. So even though someone says something offensive, I choose not to be offended. Right? So if you understand and integrate these principles, I don't know, it might work for you. Be a scientist, test it out, man, see if it works. And if you have some other strategies for dealing with triggering or toxic people, please drop it in the comments, man. These are just some of the things that worked for me, and perhaps they might work for you. Who knows, man? But hope you enjoyed, right? Like, subscribe, share if you took some value from this video, and I'll see you next time.